Hello and welcome everyone to this Desteni Movie Night Hangout. And tonight we're going to discuss the movie Princess Mononoke, which is a Japanese animated movie. And with me tonight I have two guests, and it's Paul from Canada, right?
Hey, yep. Hey, everyone.
Hello, Paul. And then Hilda from Slovenia.
Yep, hello.
Hello. And okay, so for you that is watching, we have the question and answer function, which means that you'll be able to, if you go into our Google Plus homepage and click into the window that you can access from there, you can ask questions and so on, and we will answer them as we proceed here. Okay, so before we begin, I'll do a short synopsis of this movie, Princess Mononoke, and it's about this Prince Ashitaka, and he gets in a fight with a demon, and in that process he gets infected with a curse, and then he has to travel land and country to find sort of the cure for this curse. And so he ventures into a forest, and there he finds the origin of the curse. And the origin is, a war between nature on the one hand, and then human beings mining for ore on the other hand. And then the plot is that he sort of tries to find a way to get these two parties to collaborate with each other, to find peace there. And we're prepared for some questions here tonight. And the first one that I'd like to open up is the point of, how the characters in this movie are multifaceted, meaning that they're complex. They are not. It's not a character in the movie that is just evil, and there is not character that is just good, because they all have their strange memes and ideas and personalities. So, firstly, Paul, what did you see in regards to this point of, how the characters are pictured?
Yeah. In relation to the complexities, I did find it quite interesting because, look, many movie makers will, demonize one section or demonize one group of people within the movie, and create this good ideal of the others or the protagonists in the movie. Where this movie, it shows more of a accurate definition of human nature, where we do have our good tendencies and we have our also quite shitty tendencies, where we're self-interested and we don't care about who we harm in the process of obtaining those self-interests.
Yeah, so okay. And what I saw was that, okay, this is kind of like real life, because in real life, when you meet a person, that person might be angry one day and he's a real shithead because he woke up on the wrong side of the bed, as you say in Sweden, when you wake up and you're all mad. So I want to hear I can continue to ask people whether you have had this this way of seeing people, where you see them one-sided, and then you sort of open up and see that, oh, but there's like more to that person than just that initial, they're so stupid.
Yeah, that's happened actually quite a bit, where somebody will come off as a dick or angry or just a general negativity towards me or towards other people, and then once you get them one-on-one, you get to see like different sides of them. You get to see what is happening in their day-to-day life, what they're dealing with, the reasons and excuses for why they act the way that they're acting. So, Usually that initial starting point will that initial starting point of seeing them as angry or something like that, that will usually create like a overtone of how you see them. You'll see them as negative, and then once you get to know them, once you get to see them, you'll start to see different sides and aspects, and it will start to basically break down that judgment of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's very interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Hilda.
Yeah, there's always two sides of a coin, two sides of a medal. It was actually quite fascinating to see in this movie that they showed the characters like good and bad. Almost all of the characters have something good and bad about them. So this is something that we usually don't see in Hollywood movies or in movies in general, because there's always the good side, like the good character, and then the bad side, like the bad character. Then there's the bad guys, the criminals, the hitmen, the mad scientists or whatever, and then you have the superheroes who battle them, which is so unlifelike.
Yeah.
Because in real life, I doubt that anyone who is like a criminal or a mad scientist or whatever what we deem as society bad path they chose, I don't think that anybody truly believes themselves to be bad. So this is like a little delusion that we get implemented from Hollywood, that there's people who are bad and people who are good. This is not true.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not so black and white. There's complexities of gray between.
Yeah, so this was a great point to see in this movie. Definitely.
So, Hilda, have you also had this experience that, for example, I can take an example from my own life where I had a class in university, and there was one person in the class that, as I saw him, it was like, oh my God, that was what I thought then. Like, oh, he looks so, can you snobbish, like this rich boy kind of thing. Like, ugh, I don't want anything to do with it. But then I actually, said to myself, okay. But now, just because I had that initial judgment, I'm going to go and speak with him. And it was fascinating because, it was nothing of, like, my imagination of him and what he was like wasn't at all, how he was, in fact, when I got to know him.
Yeah.
So, have you had any similar experience like that?
Oh, yes. Oh, both ways, yes. Me doing that, judging from a first impression, and being judged from a first impression. It's really fascinating every time that happens when you meet a new person and you have this perception of them based on this 1 second glance that we gave them, and then when you go and talk to that person, it turns out to be completely different to our expectations, which is, by now we should be learning from this that we should not be judging, based on the first impression.
Yeah, and it's that, don't judge the book by its cover.
Exactly. Yes.
That's a saying, and still we do it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And how about you, Paul? Have you done any, seen this point as well in your life?
Yeah, actually, at work there was a guy who, well, my first judgment of him was like, he thinks he's higher than everybody. I don't know. There's just that reaction of like thinking or believing that he thinks that he's above everybody. And then after a while, I just started to talk to him. And once I started to talk to him, I realized that he's actually quite down to earth. He's relaxed, and he's quite a stable individual. So once I got over that judgment and started to see him for who he was, we actually became, quite good friends. So yeah, it was fascinating that there is like, that point of initial judgment and that resistance or definition of them then turned into, holy shit, they're not that, and then an actual cool relationship.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really interesting, and what we can learn from it is thus to never trust these initial judgments, or, where we create a stereotype because of a person because we have had one bad experience with them, and to instead push through that resistance. And what has helped me the most is actually to just go and speak with them and begin, to say, okay, reaction, now you have to be, in the back for a while, because now I'm going to get to know this individual.
Also, what I found actually was that whenever I have this whatever kind of judgment about anyone, I have come to learn that really the problem is primarily me, and this became very apparent actually when recently, not on my own case, but if you are familiar with the new video from Sia, the singer, she has a
Yeah.
little girl dancing in her video,
Yeah.
and a man. So a lot of people saw pedophilia in that.
Yeah, I know.
And it was not intended that way. It did not even, I didn't see any pedophilia in there.
Yeah.
I just saw a really beautifully
Yeah, it
executed.
was artsy, like.
Yeah, it was really great. It was supposed to be her creativity and her common sense battling. Anyway, uh, that's how I realized a little bit more even that if we see something in something that is not there, if we have this judgment, then it is actually us who is the problem. So in this case of Sia, the people who saw pedophilia in that video, there's a problem there with their heads, not with the video itself.
Yeah.
So this really helps me to stop myself whenever I have these kind of outbursts or judgments.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, anything to add to that, Paul?
Like Hilda said, that yeah, we're the problem within it. We gotta let go of those judgments. We can't judge a book by its cover. You gotta get all the information before you can actually get to know somebody.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Next topic is then justifications, because the characters in the movie, when we get to know them, we have the Princess Mononoke, or Mononoke. She is protecting her forest, and that's her thing, her passion. Though when we look closer at it, when she's apparently protecting the forest, she's actually causing some damage, like really serious damage. It's killing people and making wives lose their husbands and so on, creating lots of hate, you could say. Though she justifies that with, oh, I'm protecting my home, I'm protecting nature. And then we also have Eboshi, Lady Eboshi. She's obviously destroying the forest and shooting the wolves and the monkeys and cutting down trees. And she's defending that, justifying it, saying, I'm doing it for Irontown, for these women that I've found in prostitution, and for these lepers. So, I mean, then how is it we can sort of see from within this that, in protecting something that we perceive, in defining ourselves as only one part of the picture and justifying that, how that is we create consequences. So, I mean, can you relate to this, for example, Hilda, how you define yourself in your life according to your own point of self-interest, and then, only push that point and sort of justify why you should have that point of self-interest, and then how that creates consequences, for example?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's so many conflicts and consequences and friction whenever I, for instance, push like a point and don't want to let go of my self-interest and do not take into consideration other people. I mean, this always happens. Whenever there's self-interest without consideration, without acknowledgement of other people, of our surroundings, of other factors that are affected by our decisions, this always creates friction at other people. And recently, it's been very obvious. It was interesting. I had, uh, let's say, clash with another person who was quite emotional about some point. I presented like a solution to a problem, and they didn't want to take it into consideration because they wanted, against all common sense actually, to wait for a third party's decision, although that third party wouldn't have influenced the solution in any way.
Mm.
So in that moment, I started saying, come on, this is not common sense, we can do it without the third person as well, it's not a problem. And the other person started thumping, actually screaming and thumping with their hand on the table that, no, we're going to wait. And in that moment, I felt myself reacting, and it was like, within myself, it was, oh my god, they just want to have their way now. And I started saying that, but in that moment, I stopped myself because I knew that if I say anything, it will just become worse. It will be like a nuclear disaster.
Yeah.
So I shut up, I said, okay, fine. I went outside of the room, and it wasn't like 30 seconds later that the other person realized they exploded for no reason. They apologized and called me back and said, okay, we'll do it your way.
That's interesting.
So yeah, always taking into consideration other people and how their viewpoint without blindly pushing just for one's own point is always very good for communication.
Yeah. How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's many times where when I have a point of self-interest that comes up, in light of like doing something that I know that needs to be done, there's an infinite amount of infinite amount of excuses and justifications that come up within the mind where, I can make them seem, as valid as possible, and in trying to make them seem as valid as possible, I'm not considering the consequences of my actions participating in self-interest. And so I do inevitably fuck people over and fuck myself over. So it's understandable, and it's quite cool how the director puts this point within the movie to show, how it is that we're operating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool because, when the main character, the prince, comes in, he's like this point that isn't, the thing he does is that he isn't just possessed with a self-interest. Like, he hasn't invested himself in any of the two, let's say, factions. He likes them both in their own way. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting point to take into account when facing conflicts. For example, in walking a relationship with another person that I have done now for the last couple of years, I've faced this point extensively of,
Yeah.
seeing, it's so easy to, when you approach another and they disagree, you think, fuck, they're stupid or something like that. Why don't they agree with me? Why do they become angry? But it's so interesting to look at. Okay, after the conflict has subsided, and to see that, okay, I actually created this because I approached it in a, not effective way. Maybe I came in with a slightly harsh voice, like, oh, well, something like that, and then trigger the other person. So it's been fascinating to see that conflict in my world actually represent or show me what I have not worked very effectively with myself yet.
Mm.
So is there something you can recognize or relate to?
Yeah,
Definitely,
specifically
yeah.
with the relationship point, definitely. Yeah, walking within a relationship, And letting go of those points of self-interest are like, it really pushes you to change that point, because look, when you're in that point of self-interest, you're not considering the other in your actions. When you're creating a world and living in a world with another person, like in direct, I guess, like direct consequence of your actions. So, um, like when you're in that point of self-interest, you're not looking at the fact that when you do act in that point of self-interest, you are immediately going to have an effect on the other person within your life. And I've done the same thing where I kind of went about it in the opposite way, where it's not so much of like a projection of anger or like this harsh tone. I kind of more secede into myself and cut myself off from the other individual, and then that has so many effects on the relationship. Yeah.
So is that also some form of manipulation, would you say?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's a manipulation of myself to go into that point of self-interest, and a manipulation of the other.
Yeah. Because I've noticed that in my relationship, that sometimes when I feel really hurt, I will withdraw, and then that is some form of punishment. Like, now I will take my revenge because I won't speak to you.
Yeah,
because you hurt me.
Precisely.
Can you relate as well, England?
Yes, definitely sounds familiar. It's called brooding, I think.
Yeah, brooding. Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah. Okay, ready to move on to the next point. So that is then, Ashitaka, and I touched upon this. You know that he comes in as this point of he is not vested. So would you say that he is then better equipped at handling this issue that has been created by nature?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a neutral standpoint. He sees things from a neutral point of view, without taking sides. Throughout the movie, he is very intent on not taking sides. So he helps the princess, and he helps Lady Eboshi to come back to her girls and to her town. And this is very, very important when people are neutral, when they are not emotional about an issue, when they do not take a plus or minus side, they do not take the positive or negative stance, they do not judge the situation as positive or negative, they just see a problem, then you are also able to see a solution if you're neutral about it.
Yeah.
Whereas when you are emotional and energetic and angry and reacting and all over the place, there's no way to see a solution to the problem. Maybe not completely related to this, but an analogy of this would be when two people are in love, and there's a bigger group of people, and those two people are infatuated and they have hormones with each other. Usually it happens so that everybody in the group sees it before they do. If it makes sense, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So by the time that those two people figure out that they are attracted to each other and come together, everybody else in the group is like, oh, finally you figured it out. So yeah, when you are neutral, when you are outside of an emotional situation, you can see it. From the outside, you can see clearly what's going on.
Yeah.
And you can also see the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Paul?
Well, yeah, like they said in the movie, Ashitaka has eyes unclouded by hate. So, like, what Princess Mononoke has hate towards Lady Abishu?
Eboshi.
Eboshi, thank you. Yeah. So they both have these points of hate directed towards each other, so they only see them as the enemy. Where Ashitaka comes in and he doesn't have, like you said, any vested interest in in each of the parties. So he comes in as a neutral point and can see he can see each point for what it is,
Yeah.
and yeah, and he stands as his solution, as wanting peace, where the others do want peace, but they're approaching it in a hateful manner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
it's the same thing for our lives, where previously, like we were saying, when we hold those judgments towards another person, we're not seeing them for everything that they are.
yeah.
Exactly.
And I mean, I would like to share a point here. As I said, I walked a relationship for a couple of years, and sometimes it's gotten quite tough, and obviously because both me and my partner have been not very pleased with one another. So what we've then done is that we have usually had a friend of ours come in and sort of work as a mediator of sorts, or we talk with them, we share, okay, I think like this, and my partner thinks like that, and okay, what do you say? And it's interesting because each time we've done that, they're like, oh, well, you just do like that. And it's like, oh, yeah. So it's like they have this like simple solution that is, why didn't I think of that? Yeah, that's right,
Yes,
because I
exactly.
was so angry at her. Or so.
That's exactly it, yes. We still, as humanity, we are on such like a beginner's level of communicating. It's like a whole humanity is still on the level of fighting and bickering and being angry and being emotional towards each other, which is so exhausting, really, and so we don't really see how our individual little conflicts are actually caused by the same thought patterns in our heads as wars on a global scale.
Mm.
So as long as we as humanity are on these little profit-driven and self-interest-driven little bickerings, we cannot abolish wars on a global level.
Yeah.
So this would be good to take into consideration by every human being,
Yeah. Everyone that wants to stop wars, like at the beginner's level, we have to deal with this. Firstly, maybe the relationship with our partner. Deal with those
Yeah.
wars first.
Yes, exactly. Because we are still, fighting for peace, which is like an
That's
oxymoron.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
somebody
fight
said
for
it.
peace.
Yeah,
I
somebody
kill
wrote
for
somewhere.
peace. I will
Yes,
murder you for
exactly.
peace.
Yeah, that's like fucking for virginity, Yeah.
Yeah. So, Paul, have you had any? I know you're also working on relationship, and have you ever had this experience where okay, things get, how do you say, hectic, and then someone comes in and say, "Oh, that's so simple, guys. You just do like that."
Yeah. Well, like even when you come out of the reaction or come out of whatever the hell that you're in, you really realize yourself that that solution was simple. Like, why the hell was I allowing myself to throw such a tantrum, or why was I accepting that shit? And it's quite cool because once you let go of that point of reaction, you're not clouded anymore by whatever the hell you were going through.
Okay, so let's move on to the next point, and it's in relation to this. Yeah, exactly. So let's continue on what we were talking about here. But now let's go on to the points of, okay, I am in this position. I'm really pissed off at another, but I don't have access to a mediator. So what would you say, Hilda, is a solution to sort of get me out of that state?
Yeah, well, if you are in process and if you're doing the Desteni process, then the first thing you resort to is breathing. The first thing is, stopping yourself, calming yourself down, breathing, and not allowing the thoughts and the reactions to escalate.
All right.
Which is tricky, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of
Yeah. I would say so.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the first thing, and then of course self-forgiveness on the patterns that I've noticed myself reacting to. Like a few days ago, I became angry with my partner for playing on the piano a piece and playing it in the major key instead of in the minor key. I found that, completely against any kind of musical rules, and how dare you, the composer didn't write it like that. So how dare you play it like that? So yeah, I had to do a few self-forgivenesses on that.
That's funny. So, what suggestion do you give, Paul? How have you dealt with this? Okay, now I'm angry. So, what do you do then?
You need to take a step back from all the reactions. Like, if you need to, just take some time, go sit outside and breathe for a bit, and allow yourself that space to like kind of process what the hell you're going through, and then in that be honest with yourself about what you're accepting and allowing within yourself, or why you're allowing that reaction to come up. And then, once you've found the solution within yourself, you can go back to your partner and say, this is what I was going through, or like it doesn't even need to be specifically within a relationship. It can be within a friendship. It can be within any type of relationship that you have. Yeah, you can go back to the other person and state, this is what I was going through. These are the reasons. Sorry for reacting. Let's walk a solution.
Yeah. So also, now, we have talked about the point of, okay, we become angry, and if we relate it back to the movie, Eboshi and Mononoke, they were pissed off. So now we sort of talked about, okay, what's the solution? So step back and deal with the point firstly. Let it go. And then we come into the point of, the creation. Because what I found is that, a relationship, it's like a perfect foundation and platform for creation. Yet it's not something that will emerge automatically. So let's say here, if we relate it back to the movie, Mononoke wants her forest, and Eboshi wants her iron. So in that, they then come together with no reactions and, form a solution. And this is a way I have found, that you're actually able to, in a relationship, for example, create something that you want to have, a desire that you've had. For example, I want to be hugged when I wake up in the morning. That it's not, it's actually something that you're able to create, though you simply discuss it with your partner, instead of, for example, being angry at your partner for not hugging you and then saying angrily, "You're never hugging me," or something like that. So, is this something you can relate to? And do you have such a process of creation you can share, where you have created something? Initially, it was a conflict, but then you actually made something out of it.
So yeah. In the point of the relationship that I'm in at right now, things are a bit uncertain in relation to how our future is going to go. How we're able to basically get together in the future. And so in that, there's a lot of uncertainty, because there's a lot of red tape within the system. There's a lot of visas, there's a lot of travel, there's a lot of monetary things. So that was like creating a point of like conflict where we're not absolutely creating something to stand by. We are more so kind of flying by the seat of our pants, if you know the expression.
No, what's that?
No, flying by the seat of our pants is like just going with the flow, going with whatever comes up.
Okay.
Yeah, like like flying by the seat of your pants is like being pulled by your pants, ass forward. So, we were approached with that point, and then we had to take a look at what it is that we're going to create between ourselves, and how it is that we are going to create a space within ourselves to support each other no matter what, rather than going into just going with the flow, trying to, I guess, basically deal with whatever comes up, but rather create something effective, not waiting for those points to come up, creating solutions already.
Yeah. That's cool. And how about you, Hilda?
Yeah, I've had many instances where I wanted my partner to read my mind.
Oh,
And yeah,
that's
well, well, it's the same as I want them to hug me, or women are like that, especially wanting attention without having to ask for it.
Yeah,
Because
I've
we're
noticed.
entitled to it, yeah. We
I
are
used
genetically
to.
entitled.
I said to my partner, just ask me. So no, you should know it. What?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that. So yeah, there's always a lot of conflict coming from uncommunicated points. Like we think that something should be taken for granted, like something should be done by default, and the other party doesn't see it like that, and then it creates conflict. Like also Lady Eboshi, for instance, she took it like for granted that she can just take iron from the mountain. She can take what is there for her to take without taking into consideration all the animals and all the other species, the whole life around her. So this created a conflict, of course. It eventually led to the demise of the town. So yeah, always taking into consideration the other one, and communication. Communication is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Honest, self-honest communication, of course.
Yeah, not angry communication. That doesn't work.
No. Just perpetuates the problem.
Okay, so the next point here, the next question is this point of wanting more, because that's what I could see in, for example, Lady Aboshi's way of approaching the iron point. She wanted to expand, she wanted to have more, she wanted to have more power, more influence. So,
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any perspective in regards to this point, Hilda?
Yeah, this is a common classic point in human development in the business sense, or like we could say greed, which is something I wanted to. I find it fascinating that actually most people who are poor, and that's most of Earth's population, are not greedy actually. Otherwise, they wouldn't be poor. I mean, they are poor actually because they are not greedy. So people like to give the argument that all humans are greedy, that it's just part of human nature, and that you can't do anything about it. There will always be people who are going to be exploiting the system, exploiting other people. So why the hell wouldn't I, do some kind of abuse? Which is, kind of bullshit, because most people are
fuzzy logic.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Most people are not greedy, and the majority of people would rather live in harmony if they could. Now, there is the problem of course, of wanting always more, which is created by the sheer world system that we have built up. Not the world itself, because the world is an abundant place, and there's more than enough for way more people than we have right now. But our problem is actually the perceived scarcity that for some reason we have all accepted in our lives. And that creates the illusion of lack, that actually creates this need to grab more for the future, because we don't know what might happen in the future, and we might not have enough for the future. Which is, again, like I said, bullshit, because every year the earth gives new fruits, new life. So also a fascinating point that is kind of connected to this is you guys know that in year 2005 or something like that, Al Gore came out with his documentary about
Yeah,
CO2.
An
Inconvenient Truth.
Inconvenient Truth.
So 2003.
No, I don't know.
Well, anyway, around that time, it was said that now the CO2 levels are way too high, and we need to do something about this because it is like like a 10% higher than it was 200 years ago. And back then, I didn't think about it. I mean, we learned in school that CO2 is actually a gas that feeds plants. So plants use CO2, water, and sunlight to make sugar and to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought about, why would the CO2 thing be a problem? Okay, the planet, it's a greenhouse gas, the planet is becoming warmer, so yeah, that must be a problem. I just took it for granted from the authorities that be.
Mm.
And now recently, I have learned that the actual agenda for decreasing the CO2 levels is not because it would be a problem for Earth to become warmer. The actual problem would be that the plants would have too much food and they would start growing like wildly, and this perceived scarcity that is implemented in our system would become very obviously staged. Like there wouldn't be any scarcity anymore because food would be growing everywhere, and the elites are terrified of people having abundance
Mm.
because fear of scarcity is how this rat race system is perpetuated.
That's a fascinating point.
Yeah.
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 Last week, Walmart had to, sorry, just this one point. Walmart had to reduce the price of bananas for 12 cents because there's suddenly an overflow of bananas.
Okay, Paul, and this will be the last question, by the way. At this point of wanting more, is it something, if you can take it back to your personal life, is it something you've noticed there?
Yeah, it certainly is. Um, like, wanting more money and that fear of scarcity, or wanting more gadgetry, computers or things like that. I've rarely taken into consideration, where it's coming from, what processes are going into it, what I'm supporting. The greed point and wanting more, again, it's a self-interest point. So within the self-interest points, we're not looking at, or I wasn't looking at, um, the consequences of my actions. What me wanting more, or what me purchasing another item would basically create, or what it is that I'm supporting within it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And with that, we'll say goodbye for this hangout. Everyone watching, thank you very much for being here. And okay, next week, next Friday, Joanna will host a hangout, and she's going to host it will be Birdman, the movie. And I will say thank you very much, participants. It's been very fun and cool to have you here. Very interesting perspectives.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
It's enjoyable.
Yeah. Okay, so bye everyone, and I'll see you in 4 weeks' time, I think it is.
Okay, bye.